And we're live with Sanna again. There she is. And we're going to go through this profile, which is the Keirsey, the healer, whose name was changed to the reconciler. On the website, it will say healer, but it's the reconciler. It's reconciling alienate. So it's a bit like a family therapist. But it's also very ethical as well, this type. So there's a couple of things I've written on here. Oh yeah, I put something there. Compare the feisty but kind ISFP. So we've got here, from paragraph 2. Informative role of advocate of harmonious interaction. Means INFP considers the consequences of their views on the feelings of others. Thus, harmonious interaction. Oh no, that's me. That's what my sort of comment on it. Harmonious interaction. I was sort of trying to find the connections with ethics of relations. So to the INFP, healing means mending those divisions that plague one's private life and one's relationships. It means treating oneself and relating to others in a conciliatory manner, helping to restore lost unity, integrity, and what INFPs call oneness. These helpers present a tranquil and noticeably pleasant face to the world, but while to all appearances they might seem gentle and easygoing, on the inside they are anything but serene, having a capacity for caring not usually found in other types. Victor calls the EII the humanist. Healers care deeply, passionately about a few special persons or a favorite cause. And that wasn't mentioned in the INFJ one, or a favorite cause. So this profile has a lot more emphasis on ethics, or a favorite cause, and their fervent aim to bring peace to the world and wholeness to themselves and their loved ones. So what do you think of that paragraph?
Yeah, I relate.
Yeah,
I've definitely had causes, not necessarily permanent ones.
Yeah.
But if I do go for a cause, I kind of tend to go a little obsessive.
I mean, Jonathan, he types himself and sees himself as INFJ, and as INFJ and IEI, and I have no reason to doubt him in that. And he also, though, identifies as Enneagram Type 1, which is quite ethically based, and we did quite a few videos on it. And we did one about his Catholic faith as well, and how that is a part of his moral makeup. So we did quite a few. And in one of the hangouts, it's like the only one where I fell asleep. So it ends with, I think Ben's fallen asleep. And then we just, because we did 3 or 4 hangouts in a row. Bring peace to the world, wholeness to themselves and loved ones. Yes, you are a humanitarian, and most NFs are going to have those things anyway. So yeah, I'll go through this quickly for the people that haven't seen the other video. As a variant of Plato's idealists and Aristotle's ethicists, the INFPs are a little different from other NFs in most respects. Like all the idealists, they are abstract in communicating and cooperative in implementing goals. They want to learn about the humanities, are preoccupied with morale, and work well with personnel. In orientation, they are altruistic, credulous, mystical, situated on pathways with their eye on tomorrow. They base their self-image on being empathic, benevolent, and authentic. Often enthusiastic, they trust intuition, yearn for romance, seek identity, prize recognition, and aspire to the wisdom of a sage. Intellectually, they are prone to practice diplomacy far more than strategy, logistics, and especially tactics. So
yeah, that's the exact same paragraph.
Yeah, that's what I've written. All NFs. And yeah, so further, with their probing or exploring nature, they lean more towards the advocate's informative role than the scheduling mentor's directive role. And because of their seclusiveness and reserve, they seem to care more to be a healer of conflicts than a people's champion. To visualize INFP intellectual development, consider the following bar graph depicting the most probable profile of their diplomatic roles. So you got there, it's that thing again where in this, ENFJ is the most opposite, because ENFJ, sorry, is expressive and directive. And then the middle two, they have one of the dichotomies in common. So champion also being informing, counselor also being reserved. Right. So healer of conflicts. And of course, you go more towards the counseling of the individual rather than the healer of conflicts.
I mean, I think I can do this.
Yeah.
But do I want to?
Yes. And that's the thing, is the idea is that it's doable to do these certain things. So within the temperament, the roles within the temperament. Yep. So number 3. You go on.
I don't think I would necessarily feel that this is my purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, and this is where we get very ethical. Healers have a profound sense of idealism derived from a strong personal morality, and they conceive of the world as an ethical, honorable place. Indeed, to understand healers, we understand their idealism as almost boundless and selfless, inspiring them to make extraordinary sacrifices for someone or something they believe in. They are the charm. What do you think about that bit in green? Those two first two sentences.
I have the idealism. I have the strong personal morality, but I don't think I see the world that way. I think the world kind of fails in that sense.
Mm. And to an extent, all NF resemblers are going to have these things because they are all idealists. They're all NFs. It's part of the definition of NF. They are the shaman, the medicine man or witch doctor of the tribe, the prince or princess in fairy tales, the true knight or defender of the faith, like Don Quixote or Joan of Arc. That was interesting. This character here, Don Quixote, Auschra typed Don Quixote as ENTP, which is weird because the word quixotic comes from this character Don Quixote as a character that is and if you look in the dictionary under quixotic, it will say something like unrealistically idealistic. If you have a look, Sanna, you can see what it says for quixotic. It should say something like unrealistically idealistic or something like that.
Well, it does say idealistic.
Yeah. Yes, that made me think it was weird that Auschra would type that character's ENTP. That's odd. And they even had the nickname for the ENTP was Don Quixote. And I was thinking, what? That's a bit weird. Although Auschra herself was ILE, so that was like, that's a little bit odd. Joan of Arc, yeah, I mean, that's a lot of idealism there. You would think almost more ESI for someone like Joan of Arc.
Yeah, I don't think the polar SE is going to be very...
Yeah, not unless they were really counterphobic.
Or really pissed.
Yes, that's right, yes. Isolated by their seclusiveness and infrequency, around 1% of the general population, their idealism leaves them feeling even more isolated from the rest of humanity. So, do you feel that, or to a lesser degree?
Isolated?
Yeah.
Um, I've definitely felt kind of like an outsider in
But
a lot of ways.
do you feel like that because of your idealism, though?
Not, no, not because of my idealism. It's just more like how I am.
Mm.
Like I don't, I don't behave in a manner that I would be recognized as part of the group.
Right, right. So we got here with so I mean, this is actually bringing to my attention just how different this profile is, say, from MBTI INFP. That there are differences between. That's why Keirsey Jr., David Mark Keirsey, who was on in the previous video, folks, said that they do not correlate with the MBTI profiles. He said correspond rather than correlate. They roughly equate. What we got here? Oh, it may be that healers seek unity within themselves and between themselves and others because of a feeling of alienation which comes from their often unhappy childhood. Unity with themselves and between themselves and others. I mean, interesting.
I don't think for me it's because of unhappy childhood. I think it's just how I'm wired.
Mm. Right. So you could. It's arguable that that's on the same territory as ethics of relations. It depends how you want to classify things.
Yeah, I don't think you need to have an unhealthy past
Yeah.
to be that way.
Yeah. The next one is. Let's see how many are left. Oh, there's only this. The next one, but here we go. Just check what the next. Oh, the next one's quite full. Right. What we got here? Oh, what did I use for the? Was I using a full color coding there? No, not really. I think I just put like the bits that I thought that were particularly FI. I did in green, and then like the NI I think was like NI stuff in purple. Yeah, this I've roughly done this. Oh, yeah, that's sort of done it here. There's the key. Pretty much like EII with the colors. I always do orange for the extroverted sensing.
Is that because you don't like orange?
Yeah. And then the pink, so you can see the colors there, and the NE for the there, and there's bits. Right, okay, right. The bit about the parents. Where did we go back to here? INFPs live a fantasy-filled childhood, which sadly is discouraged or even punished by many parents. With parents who require them to be sociable and industrious in concrete ways, and also with down-to-earth siblings. This is something that Vladley might relate to because he has down-to-earth siblings. ESTP and ESFP resemblers. Also with down-to-earth siblings who conform to these parental expectations. His siblings are SPs, so I don't know if they're doing that much conforming. Healers come to see themselves as ugly ducklings. Other types may shrug off parental expectations that do not fit them, but not the INFPs. I don't know if I necessarily should have put that under SE break, but wishing to please their parents and siblings, but not knowing quite how to do it, they try to hide their differences, believing that they are bad to be so fanciful. So unlike their more solid brothers and sisters, solid brothers and sisters, they wonder, some of them, for the rest of their lives, whether they are okay. They are quite okay, just different from others. Swans reared in a family of ducks. So that's a little bit E4-ish, like concentrating on the individuality.
You mean a lot?
Yes, I mean, they would love to see, oh yes, we're the swans. Everybody else are ducks.
Well, I didn't have parents that, my parents were quite understanding. I'm pretty sure my mom was an idealist. So
right. Yep, that's That's fair enough. And it does help when you have parents of the same temperament. Even so, healers find it difficult to believe in themselves and to trust themselves. Yeah, I sort of put that under SE because of like the audacity and like the confidence of it, and like the SE break. Deeply committed to the positive and the good, yet taught to believe there is evil in them, they can come to develop a certain fascination with the problem of good and evil, sacred and profane. They are drawn toward purity, but can become engrossed with sin, continuously on the lookout for the wickedness that lurks within them. Then when they believe they have yielded to an impure temptation, they may be given to acts of self-sacrifice and atonement. Others seldom detect this inner turmoil, however, for the struggle between good and evil is within the INFP, who does not feel compelled to make the issue public. Yeah, he's gone a little bit poetical there. I think Keirsey Jr. said that these descriptions were more romantic than the ones in Personology, which concentrated more on the role, say the role of the healer. Whereas here, they're really like talking about the person, sort of like separated from their role. So does anything about that jump out, or does it seem a little bit too extreme or a little bit harsh?
Well, I've definitely had trouble believing in myself, trusting my judgment. And I do have a little bit of this other stuff,
Yeah.
but not to this extent.
No.
I've done a lot of work to accept parts of myself that I'm not happy with.
Yeah.
So I don't have this kind of, most of the time, I don't have this kind of conflict in me.
I think
sometimes.
When Keirsey was writing these profiles, he obviously had a lot of experience of people of this type, but he probably wasn't able to separate out somebody's Enneagram type. So there's going to be like INFPs, and so you're going to get the themes of that sounds a bit 4-ish, that sounds a bit 6-ish. So there might be some certain things in here, or that sounds a bit 1-ish. I know the ones tend to be with the J's, but you know those certain themes of the 1, the 6, and the 4 can come through. Good and evil with the inner turmoil, does not want to see compelled to make it public yet. Yeah, so I put there real concentration on their own feelings. 6. Right, so the color code, NE in blue. In evaluating things and making decisions, healers prefer to follow their intuition rather than logic. This is where he gets a little bit cheeky. He gets a little bit cheeky. They respond to the beautiful versus the ugly, the good versus the bad, and the moral versus the immoral. Impressions are gained in a fluid, global, diffused way. Metaphors come naturally to them, but may be strained. They have a gift for interpreting symbols as well as creating them, and thus often write in lyric, poetic fashion. So I've done that as NI. They show a tendency to... This is the bit where it gets cheeky. They show a tendency to take deliberate liberties with logic, believing as they do, and unlike the rationals, that logic is something optional. So I see that as FI versus TI. And that can be a thing. But so what have I got here? Oh yes, that is actually true. That Keirsey Senior was into Austrian school economics, and its logic, I put there, its logic upsets the idealist healer's FI. That's true. Because Austrian school is very free market economics, and if you have a proper free market, things will work out for the best. And The NFs tend to have a collectivist mindset, and so their politics can lean that way. Right, so... Oh dear, that's cheeky. Logic is something optional. They may also...
I don't agree with that. I just
I
think
know,
that
that's too far.
there are times when you need logic, and there are other times when...
Yeah, that's a little bit too cheeky about INFPs. But you know, all of these INTPs have their biases. You get them in Victor's profiles as well. I mean, Victor's profile makes the ENTP look quite bad. You know, it talks about them. They have the appearance of the divine child and things like that. They may also at times assume an unwarranted familiarity with a certain subject matter, believing in their impressionistic way that they know all about that, though they never really mastered the details. So I think that's the idea, that they think they can NE it. Because I sometimes get that as well. Like if it's a particular subject where it's... So my experience at university was that if it was a new subject and if I could relate it to something I already knew, I could get it very quickly. But then what would happen is over the weeks, the other students who remember stuff better would then like go ahead of me.
Yeah.
But the early lectures I would sort of get. They have difficulty thinking in conditional if-then terms. Oh dear, it's really putting the boot in. They have difficulty thinking in conditional if-then terms. They tend to see things as either black or white and can be impatient with contingency.
Okay.
Yeah, this is like a stereotypical version of the INFP. This is what INTPs think about INFP. That's a little bit cheeky about their... Like, it's like where you would be like, they're all in their feelings, they're not doing the logic, you're not thinking in if-then terms. Because I mean, I found out from his son that he and his father would talk a lot about Austrian school economics, and that tends to be very libertarian, and the libertarians tends to rely on a lot of TI kind of logical arguments. And I did a hangout with Wojtek where the TPs have a heavy tendency to be libertarian, and maybe it's in the politics. Maybe he saw a lot of the INFPs as left-leaning, and maybe he thought that, well, when you talk economics with them, they don't understand them. That's the sort of... Because that's usually what happens with them, and like the conditional if-then terms. Because when it's in other areas, then yeah, they can do the TI stuff. It's just that I think if the logic rubs up against a deeply held conviction of theirs, then they don't want to accept the logic.
Isn't that the case for everybody though?
Yeah, but I think with certain people, it's like if it goes up against a value that's so much part of their identity, then it takes a higher threshold of stuff in order to get past, especially if you just presented them with a TI argument. If you presented them with a load of facts, then eventually they would go with the facts. But so, for example, here's an example. A libertarian might argue about the minimum wage with an INFP, and an INFP would not accept the negative side effects of a minimum wage. And the libertarian would be able to go through all the logic of it, and they would go, no, you're not right. And they would like look at other things. That is a little bit cheeky, but now it gets better. At work, healers are adaptable, welcome new ideas and new information, are well aware of people and their feelings, and relate well to most others, albeit with some reserve. They dislike telephone interruptions and work well alone. They are patient with complicated situations, but impatient with routine details. They can make errors of fact, but seldom of feelings. This is where they say they're good at the scholarly stuff later on. So I know it was a bit cheeky early. So it was cheeky about their TI stuff, but it gives them more credit later. The INFP's career choices should tend toward the ministry, missionary work, social work, library research, tutoring, child counselling, college teaching in the humanities, and away from business. I thought that was funny. Oh, yes. Carol taught that story. So Carol said that she asked somebody what about an INFP and somebody who knew type, and she said, "What would an INFP like? What would it be like for them in business?" And they said it would be excruciating. And so that was in the last hangout, the previous hangout we did with Carol. I think on the SI, we did it on SI in the ENFP, or rather the IEE, and we talked about FI at the beginning because it was stuff that I forgot to say in the FI hangouts. What we got here? Away from business, they seem capable of applying themselves scholastically to gain the necessary training for professional work, and often do better in college than in high school. They have a natural interest in scholarly activities. And so, you know, he's giving them credit there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so library research, tutoring, scholastic activities, and to demonstrate, they have a natural interest in scholarly activities and to demonstrate as they do. The next one is, and this is the final page. There you go. There's the key again. Oh yes. So what I've done here, just so people bear this in mind, FI is strong in all the NFs. So you can say that in ENFJ, it's control FI. So it's running in the background, high information. You can say in INFJ, where it's creative function. You can say in ENFP, it's the demonstrative function. And you can say in INFP, well, it's the management function, the lead function. So even when it's unvalued, it's a strong unconscious function, even though in the case of ENFJ, it's weak in terms of energy for it, but it's there in terms of information, at least how Model G models it. Model A doesn't really say the same thing in terms of the control function. It just has it as sort of ignoring. But Victor may have modeled it like that because it really fits LII well. This idea of that we know the TE stuff in theory, but we can't be bothered to enact it. Other NX, what we got here? A remarkable facility with language. Often they hear a calling to go forth into the world to help others, and they seem ready to make the personal sacrifices involved in responding to that call, even if it means asking their loved ones to do likewise. To help others. I've sort of done that as SI, alleviation of discomfort, because that's what's in the Victor EII humanist profile. Oh, what he has there, Sanna, is they're launched by seeing discomfort in others. And so that stimulates their FI. So say suffering in the developing world. Here we go. In their mating role, healers have a deep commitment to their vows. They are loyal to their mates, and while they might dream of greener pastures, if they stray into those pastures, they soon locate the nettles. They like to live in harmony. There's that word. Although it did mention it one in the other profiles, and maybe they cancel each other out. They live in harmony, and they go to great lengths to avoid interpersonal conflict. They are sensitive to the feelings of their mates, and they enjoy pleasing them, although they may have difficulty in expressing interest and affection openly or directly. INFPs cling to their dreams and often find it difficult to reconcile a romantic, idealized concept of conjugal life with the realities of everyday living with another person. Now, why have I put that in? I put here creative NI minus. Right. So let's see how NI this bit is. Even at the best of times, they seem fearful of too much marital bliss, afraid that current happiness may have to be paid for with later sacrifices. The devil is sure to get his due if one experiences too freely of happiness, or for that matter of success, or beauty, or wealth, or knowledge. This almost pre-conscious conviction that pleasure must be paid for with pain can cause a sense of uneasiness. This sounds quite E4. Can cause a sense of uneasiness in INFPs when they marry. They may feel they must be forever vigilant, or maybe E6, ever vigilant against invasion, and they can therefore have trouble relaxing in the happiness of mating.
That sounds uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes. This is a bit idiosyncratic, this profile.
Yeah, I mean, the other one seems so positive and like.
Yes, I mean, there is extremely with the superpowers.
Yeah.
And then this one is talking about, well, they can't think properly.
Yeah, this is basically like you're screwed.
Yes. Oh dear. These reserved and soft-spoken advocates are fierce protectors of home and family. Their home is indeed their castle. As parents, they are devoted to the welfare of their children, treating them with great sympathy and adaptability. In the routines of daily living, INFPs tend to be flexible, even compliant with their mates' ideas of discipline. Yeah, their dual being ESTJ. And thus are easy to live with. Compliant with their mates' ideas of discipline. That's interesting. They will often give their children a voice in family decisions until their value system is violated. Yes, that's the thing that Dario noticed with with at least the ones that type as INFP in the Berens-Nardi system of they're very good listeners until the value is violated. They dig in their heels and will not budge from their ideals. Life with a healer parents will go harmoniously along for long periods until an ideal is stepped on. Then they will resist and insist. I love that. Then they will resist and insist. All right, so that was a bit. Oh, well, I've got it here on the harmony thing. On harmony in MBTI, this is more FE and FI in staying true to yourself. In socionic, harmony is more FI when it's close relations, which is what you were saying in the other video.
Yeah. I think it's socionics. It's kind of SI if it's physically harmonious.
Yeah. Yeah, because like in the gammas, their FI is not so much related to the harmony with the SFPs. ESFP switches over. We can't really talk about ESI and ISFP. What we got here? I mean, ESI is like a moral enforcer. they are hardcore.
Yeah.
What we got here? Also SI, where yeah, that's right. When you mentioned there about the SI, the harmony, there's an SI part of it, and as you said, when you've got the FE with the SI, and Jack Aaron has said this in a previous hangout, so I'll give him credit for it about how and I think he said that the MBTI FE is like a combination, it's like the alpha FE, and
yeah,
because you've got the comfort aspect of the harmony, and then you've got here versus the conflict SE, because also SE break. Right then, so I will stop that and then ask Sanna. So Sanna, what do you think about? I know you talked a little bit there, but what do you think about it overall?
I do relate to a lot of those things.
Mm.
I think it's a little bit too judgy.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a little bit cheeky about their TI, but I can understand how. In fact, we might be able to invite Jeff for the last few moments of this, because he is my go-to person on Keirsey temperament theory, and I will just now with Sanna. Right. I'll just put that there. Did that work? That's not the proper link. I think that's the proper link. Right. So, yeah. So, I would say with that there was a big concentration there on ethics, wasn't there? That wasn't in the counselor profile. The stuff in the counselor profile was stuff about them being they're intricately woven, complicated people, and they're good at working with troubled individuals. Then it was writing stuff about the emotions on their face, wasn't it? In the counselor profile. Didn't mention much in this about emotions on their faces and being expressive.
No.
This was concentrating a lot on their ethics and what he perceives as weak TI, and then stuff about their associative chain their impressionistic train of thought, where it's like just trying to get where if they think they know the subject, because this is like an NP failing where we think that, okay, if we just know the fundamentals, we can NP it and work it out. Okay, that's more the TI thing. The NP thing is if we can relate a subject to something we already know, we think that because we've related to the thing that we already know, that we already understand that thing because we've related it. Because it's like, oh, that's just like this. So it's like B is just like A, and I know A really well, therefore I know B really well. I think that's what it's like.
Yeah.
I
mean, sure, I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
And I do have a focus on ethics. I just don't think I make such a big deal out of it. It's more internal and sort of more quiet, and you don't notice unless you do something that breaks one of my values, I suppose.
So I suppose the main difference between the types is, especially in the behavior, is that thing about directive versus informing. And you do prefer to enact the role of counselor rather than this role. And we'll look about this more in a subsequent hangout where we actually look at the role variants and that as the diplomatic intellect. And in this one where you've got, when it said there, the trying to bring harmony into conflicts, all that kind of stuff. It sounds like very quite ethics of relations.
Yeah, and I can do that, but unless it's needed, I won't do it. I'm not gonna do it by default.
Yeah. So what I'll show people is in the personology book, it will show for. Let's have a look for NIFX. So this would be for Sanna, and I'll try and hold it up. So, and I'll try and get it to focus. Right, so there, the top one is, does it say something like, have I got the right profile? Yeah, enterprising mentor. So you got there, it says there, counselor at the top. So it's like, so this is like, he sort of does this as like the IQ of the type. Like their highest IQ is for doing the role of counselor. Then it's educator, which is ENFJ. I mean, you might differ with that. So it's like these are the enterprising mentors. And then you've got, and these ones are informing. So you've got the inquiring mediators. It's reversed for me. So, and then you see there, you've got the reconciler. So that's like the INFP. So you can enact this role, and then you've got advocate. And as you said, it would be difficult for you to do that for ENFP. And then you've got the next one, which is, I think it's got the SJs there. Is that the SJs? I think that's monitor. Yeah, monitor, inspector. And what I need to do is I need to switch the screen around. So I'm not looking at this backwards. There we go. Perfect. So we've got the monitor. So, oh, that's interesting. So that's like an inspector. So if you forced yourself, he thinks that you could do an ISTJ role. Supervisor. Yeah, I suppose you could go towards supervisor. Then you've got ISFJ protector, ESFJ supplier. Then we've got coordinator planner. I think that is INTJ planner, because I should be a ranger. Coordinator mobilizer, that's ENTJ. Constructor designer is INTP. Constructor modeler is ENTP. Expediter crafter is ISTP. Expediter promoter is ESTP. Improviser composer is ISFP, and improviser performer is ESFP. There we go. I'm sure there are some INFJ thespians out there. But you see, Keirsey, just like Victor, gets to certain results because of certain deductions from certain premises. So the premise being that SPs are opposite from NFs because NFs are cooperative and abstract, and SPs are utilitarian and concrete. So, but then he would say, at least in their actions, that they're opposite in the way they use tools and words. And sometimes they do line up very well as completely different. So, for example, if you have a look at INFP, so it's almost like when when you look at INFP, it will have INFP at the top, and look what's at the bottom, promoter, so ESTP. It lines up with them being conflictors in socionics.
Yeah.
And so they might doubly conflict with each other. And in fact, also, if you look at INTJ, INTJ is NITE. There we go. Look at this. So you got a ranger there at the top, NITE, and the one at the bottom is provider supplier, which is ESFJ. As Socionic says, conflictors. Now, I did a table of this about which ones conflict, and it depends on, where did I do the table of which ones conflict and which ones don't? Yeah, I think I posted it. I'll find it in future, and that is, yeah, so via a different system, he gets to about the same result in the conflictor relations about half the time.
This makes your TINE happy, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, at least half the time it does. But the other times when it doesn't fit, I'm not happy. But I know why it ends up like that. It's just like with Victor, where you can say the functional tail is wagging the dog, where it's like, this is in this because of the way he's defined the profile, defined the function. And in Keirsey, you can say, well, that's there because of that dichotomy. And that's where, do you remember how in the previous Hangout, and he did say this live on air, that he had a discussion with his father about the difference between a dichotomy, so almost like black and white, versus a polarity, which is more, and he gave the example of, and when I showed him the graphic, he agreed with it, where it's more of a poles on a spectrum. And so it's not just a clear on or off, it's a spectrum. So you've got two INTPs there, father and son with different viewpoints on a very fundamental question of dichotomy versus polarity. And that's one of the things that MBTI has, that proper psychologists, why academic psychology prefers the big five, because the big five are scales. And with the MBTI, it's dichotomies. But what I would say is, though, with the MBTI, with the functions and with socionics, the way the functions line up together is beyond any kind of chance. The way the valued ones work together, it's like if this was just a random thing, it wouldn't come out like that. You know how you get the tandem uses between the functions and it's they do seem to group together in ways. So then, we've been through that. I will say goodbye from me, and Sanna will say something.
Bye.
Bye.